Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Mahaprabhu attempts to go to Vṛndāvana. But he failed. He reached all the way up to near to Navadvip, or even around Navadvip. And what happened was he was coming from Jagannath Puri, and for years he had sought permission from the devotees to go to Vṛndāvana, from the senior devotees there, take their permission and go to Vṛndāvana. But year by year they postponed the Lord's departure for Vṛndāvana, because that would take the better part of a half a year, and they had already waited out the separation when Mahaprabhu was in South India for nearly 2 years. So they weren't anxious for Mahaprabhu to go away from Jagannath Puri. But eventually they ran out of excuses. You see, during the rainy season, they would say, "It's better if you wait until Kartik. That is very nice time." When Kartik would arrive, they would say, "It's really too cold to travel now." And by the time the winter was over, they would say, "Soon it will be time for Ratha Yatra. Why don't you wait until then?" So after a while, they ran out of excuses. And then Mahaprabhu set off for Vṛndāvana via the route of the Ganges. Means he went up through Orissa to Bengal, and then he would connect to the Ganges and go towards the north. But what happened is, by the time he reached Bengal, there was a crowd of about 10,000 or plus people following him. And in fact, in one house that he stayed in, so many people tried to enter the house that it broke the walls of the house. The house fell over. So it was a small, humble dwelling, a dignified mud hut type of dwelling, thatched roof, as people used to live in India in those days. With so many people stuffed inside, it pushed the walls out of the house and it fell over. So this became a problem. He met Rupa and Sanatan in a place called Ramkeli. Sanatan Goswami said, after some time, he said, "My Lord, it doesn't look good to go to Vṛndāvana with so many people. That won't be good." So there was some dialogue about that. Then Mahaprabhu considered that advice, instruction, and he decided to return to Jagannath Puri. So this is where this begins. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived in Jagannath Puri, he visited the temple of the Lord. News then spread all over the city that he had returned. All the devotees then came and met the Lord with great happiness. The Lord also embraced each of them in great ecstatic love. Kashi Mishra, Ramananda Rai, Pradyumna, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Vaninath Rai, Sikhi Mahiti, and all the other devotees met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gadadhar Pandit also came and met the Lord. Then, before all the devotees, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began to speak as follows. It was my decision to go to Vṛndāvana through Bengal in order to see my mother and the river Ganges. Thus I went to Bengal, but thousands of devotees began to follow me. Many hundreds and thousands of people came to see me out of curiosity. And due to such a large crowd, I could not travel very freely on the road. Indeed, the crowd was so large that the house and the boundary walls of the house where I stayed were destroyed, and wherever I looked, I could see only large crowds. With great difficulty, I went to the town of Ramakeli, where I met two brothers named Rupa and Sanatan. These two brothers are great devotees and suitable recipients of Krishna's mercy. But in their ordinary dealings, they are government officials, ministers of the king. Sri Rupa and Sanatan are very experienced in education, devotional service, intelligence, and strength, yet they think themselves inferior to straw in the street. Indeed, the humility of these two brothers could even melt stone. Because I was very pleased with their behavior, I told them, although you are both very exalted, you consider yourselves inferior, and because of this, Krishna will very soon deliver you. Purport. Such are the qualifications of a pure devotee of Krishna. Materially, one may be very opulent, experienced, influential, and educated. But if one still thinks himself lower than a straw in the street, one attracts the attention of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or Lord Krishna. Although Maharaj Prataparudra was a king, he took up the broom to clean the road for Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra. Because of this humble service, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very pleased with the king, and for that reason the Lord embraced him. According to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions, a devotee should never be puffed up by material power. He should know that material power is the result of one's past good activities, karma, and is consequently temporary or transient. At any moment, all one's material opulence can be finished. Therefore, a devotee is never proud of such opulence. He is always humble and meek, considering himself lower than a piece of straw. Because of this, the devotees are eligible to return home back to Godhead. Foremost qualification of a devotee is humility. If a devotee has real humility, this will attract Krishna. This will attract the mercy of Krishna. So if there is something which is the best, then the opposite of that is usually the worst. You follow? So if you want to attract Krishna, you have to develop humility. You may be learned, you may be unlearned. You may be a good cook, maybe a bad cook. You might not even be a cook at all. Of course, you have to be something. You have to learn some devotional activities. But none of those guarantee that you will attract Krishna. What is your cooking compared to Mother Yasoda's cooking? How tasty the dishes can you make compared to the tasty dishes that she can make out of substances which are eternal? She starts with Ananda. Sat Chit Ananda is the substance of the material world. So she's making things which are themselves eternally blissful. Making things to offer to Krishna, which start off on that level. We are starting off with things which are just totally mundane and tend to spoil, putrefy, and rot. The things of this world. They're only usable at a certain moment. But things in the material world do not undergo those. In the spiritual world, do not undergo those types of transformations. And then on top of that, the level of her devotion and such. So what is our cooking in comparison? You see. So we may be a very good cook, but simply cooking is not enough to attract Krishna. We may be very intelligent, a very good manager. We may be an excellent speaker. Or we may be a dumb fool by the Vedic standards. Actually, if you don't know Sanskrit, you're called uneducated in Vedic standards. It doesn't matter what else you know. If you don't know Sanskrit, you're uneducated. You see, it'd be like in this country, if you knew so many things but didn't know how to write your name, or you didn't know English and you couldn't read, that would be uneducated, wouldn't it? Regardless of how good of a computer software programmer you were, you would still be considered illiterate because you couldn't read, uneducated. So in the Vedic standard, which is a spiritual standard of society because it is the Vedas that contain the spiritual wealth of that society, and Sanskrit is the language that it is written in, if we don't know Sanskrit, we would be considered uneducated. That's from one point of view. However, within those spiritual textbooks, it is said in many places, one who devotes himself to the holy name of the Supreme Lord is considered the most wise amongst wise men. So, if you devote yourself to the holy name of Krishna, you may not even know how to read or write the language you speak. Nonetheless, you will be honored as a very wise and educated person, even in the assembly of demigods like Brahma, Shiva, and others. So, anyway, where was I? So, the quality of humility, however, is the single most adorable quality of the Vaishnavas. It is, Kaviraj Goswami calls it the crest jewel in the crown of Vaishnava qualities. It is the foremost. So the opposite is the most undesirable quality that we could possibly have. And we would certainly not want to cultivate the opposite of humility, which is what? Pride. We say puffed up. There used to be a saying, the only thing that's allowed to be puffed up in the temple are the puris. Everything else should be subdued, humble, and particularly the devotees. So this humility attracts Krishna very much. In all the qualities of devotion, he finds it the sweetest. So it is said that one should take the position of a straw in the street. One should be more humble than a straw in the street. So from one point of view, the straw in the street is the most negligible thing. It's not even feedable to cows, actually. Once a straw has reached the street, we don't gather that straw anymore, even to feed the cows. It's not even sufficient as cow fodder. You see, it's lost any usefulness. Why? Because the street has so many dirty things in the street. So, having come to that level, so we should consider ourselves more insignificant than the straw in the street. Well, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura once wrote that our position is even worse than the straw in the street. Because at least the straw in the street doesn't offer any resistance. The straw in the street is just the straw in the street. If you broom it to the left, it goes to the left. If you broom it to the right, it goes to the right. But we conditioned souls, Krishna wants to broom us to the right, we go, hey, what about my life? What about my independence? What about my freedom? We have so many whatabouts, you see. Krishna wants to move us to the left, we have some complaint. He says our condition is worse than a straw in the street because we offer resistance. We practically don't even believe that there is a God. We practically don't even believe it. And when we come in contact with so much personal information, we accept it, but then do we really believe it? Do we really believe that the Supreme Personality of Godhead came to this earth many, many thousands of times to deliver the fallen souls? Do we really believe that God is a person, an eternal cowherd boy, playing in the groves of Vṛndāvana with his eternal associates? Do we really believe that the spiritual world is existing? Every moment there is eternity. Do we really believe this place is a place of suffering? Well, in the stage of madhyama-adhikārī, which is our stage, we go back and forth with this for a long, long time, you see. Back and forth. When we come to the stage of uttama-adhikārī, that's the highest class of devotee, then it can be said, we really believe it. Because at that point, we have no other, even flickering attachment for anything less than Krishna, for anything what this world has to offer. But if you are truthful with yourself, you have so many attachments and attractions in this material world. Madhyama-adhikārī, still dealing with that plane of final determination, final surrender. Uttama-adhikārīs. Madhyama-adhikārīs are not ultimately, finally, fully surrendered souls. They're on the path. Lower than them are the kaniṣṭha-adhikārīs. That path is supposed to be very short in this life. That path was long in previous lives. So many people have some faith in God, some belief in God, in different religions all over the world. They're like a type of kaniṣṭhas. Very little faith, very, very little interest, very little piety, very little activity, spiritual activity. Then in this life, we live some time, we come in connection with the devotees of the Supreme Lord. We come in connection with Guru. We come in connection with the holy books, with the Mahamantra, with the deities. We should only remain kaniṣṭha after that a few days. Possibly a few days, maybe 1 week, we'll give it a month. After that, kaniṣṭha should be finished. So if you want, you can read all the details of a kaniṣṭha-adhikārī. And these things, when you read them, well, this is a kaniṣṭha-adhikārī. For example, he does not see the value of devotees. He or she only only wants to worship the deity. This is one symbol of a kaniṣṭha. He thinks that God is only in the church or the temple or only in one particular place. He thinks that his organization is the only organization for God consciousness in the whole universe. He thinks that his guru or her guru is the only guru. There is no other. These are all symptoms of a kaniṣṭha-adhikārī. So when you see these symptoms, every once in a while you'll see that, oh, this is ridiculous. Some particular idea that God exists only in your temple, nowhere else. Something like that. Then you'll see, oh, it's very easy. This should be left. This should be left behind. All these qualities should be left behind immediately, and then we embark on the path of a madhyama-adhikārī. And many qualities, positive qualities of a madhyama-adhikārī are given, and that is primarily the lifelong journey. That is a long journey. The madhyama-adhikārī is a long journey. It is one of much discrimination. Do, don't do, good, bad, clean, unclean, much discrimination. The land of discriminating. What is favorable, what is unfavorable, what is good, what is bad. What is useful, what is not useful. What is the right thing to do, what is the wrong thing to do. Discrimination. This faculty of discrimination is one of the things that separates the human species of life from all the other little cute species of life roaming around the planet. They lack proper discrimination. Particularly, they can't discriminate between matter and spirit. Now, a cow, just by smelling, can ascertain whether a plant is edible or not, you see. Even good forest people have to get out their books and look at the thing. There are so many types of mushrooms that look alike and so many things. But the cows, they just go around in the fields where there's a lot of weeds and things like that, and they smell the good and the bad, and they just pick accordingly, you see. They have this facility to discriminate what to eat. They have a mating season. They have different things where they discriminate what to do. But to discriminate what is spiritual and what is material, thought never enters their mind. What to speak of an ability to discriminate. So this is where discrimination reaches its greatest utility in the human being. He or she can discriminate what is material and what is spiritual. Knowledge doesn't mean how to make a rocket ship. According to the Vedic standard, Sankhya's definition of knowledge is the ability to understand what is material and what is spiritual. So who has this ability? Not Haridas Thakur, well, he had, of course, but say Gaurkishore Das Babaji. Or I'll give you another example. You haven't heard of him very much, but his name was Bamsi Das Babaji. Now, Bamsi Das Babaji was a contemporary of Gaurkishore, Bhaktivinoda, Śrīla Bhaktisiddhanta at that time. And he was very much a figure in the life of the Gaudiya devotees of the time. Well, just prior to his being a devotee of the Supreme Lord, he was a river pirate on the Jalangi and the Ganga and other things. Those are the old days, more than a century and a half ago. He was a river pirate. And he was uneducated by the social standards. Similarly, Gaurkishore Das Babaji is said to have not been able to read. Couldn't read Sanskrit, said he couldn't even read Bengali. But he loved to hear. So devotees would read to him Bhagavatam or read to him Caitanya-caritāmṛta. So he had a tremendous, Gaurkishore Das Babaji, also Bamsi Das Babaji, they had a tremendous faculty of discriminating what is material and what is spiritual. So much so that even they could distinguish when the scripture was being read spiritually and when it was being read materially. But someone will say, oh, but that's the Bhagavatam. Say, but that ain't the Bhagavatam, that's just so many chopped down trees ground into paper and with ink smeared all over their pages. What makes the Bhagavatam is just not the book. There's something is of value at that level. But the recitation of the Bhagavatam by the reciter is really what makes the Bhagavatam, the Srimad Bhagavatam, or the Bhagavad Gita, or not. And there was an incident where one Sahajiya commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam, he had come to Gaurkishore Das Babaji, and he had invited him, oh, Baba, please come to my katha. I'll be speaking Bhagavatam. And I'm at such and such location, our tents are there. You please come and sit and hear the the Bhagavatam. So, yes, thank you, sir. And that man went away. And Gaurkishore did not go there because he knew the man to be an unbonafide professional reciter. He had no interest in him. Maybe he'd heard about him. Maybe he just perceived it on the spot or something like this. But he had no interest to hear that man, so he didn't go. So because Gaurkishore Das Babaji didn't go, so many class devotees, proper devotees, they also didn't go, you see. If Gurudev isn't interested, then, or the Acharya isn't interested, or the Paramahansas are not interested in something, then the intelligent devotees go, what's the use of it? And they didn't go. So then this frustrated that gentleman. So what he decided to do, and then, of course, seeing that many of the known devotees weren't going, just the regular people, they weren't going either. So his whole program was a flop. So what he did is he just moved his tents over from wherever they were and set up like equivalent of across the street, but it wasn't a big street in those days. It means just across the driveway from the hut of Gaurkishore Das Babaji. And then, of course, the word was the pandal is set up at the location of Gaurkishore Das Babaji. Bhagavatam is being read. So then, at least the ordinary people, they were duped into coming. And the man held his program there for 7 days. It's called Bhagavad Saptaha. Bhagavatam is read from cover to cover in 7 days. So when it was over, and the whole thing, and during that time, Gaurkishore just locked himself in his hut and didn't show his face. He just stayed inside his hut and shut the door. Didn't come out and show his face during that time for 7 days. When it was over, and the tents were packed up, and the man was gone, and Gaurkishore was left there in his place as he was before it all started, he requested his servant, please go there and sprinkle the place with cow dung and cow urine to purify that place. And his servant said, but why does that place need to be purified? The Bhagavatam was spoken there. The Bhagavatam is the supreme pure literature. The Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord in this age. It is a literary incarnation. It is non-different than Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Bhagavatam is read there. Why does it have to be purified? And he said, Bhagavatam? I didn't hear Bhagavatam. All I heard was rupee, rupee, rupee. Give me rupee, rupee, rupee. So even the words were being spoken from Bhagavatam. Gaurkishore, that isn't Bhagavatam. That is his pratishtha. He wants honor. He wants money. He is just using the Bhagavatam as a livelihood. So some people have such discrimination that they can understand when even that which is purely spiritual is no longer purely spiritual. Contaminated by the presentation. Another example was in more current times. There was a devotee once, and all of a sudden he started to manifest extraordinary symptoms of ecstasy while chanting of the holy name of Krishna. He was a big acharya in England, and right around this time, Bhagavatam class, he would chant, and this chanting would keep going. They'd sing Jai Radha Madhava, and it would go. Once it went up to 3 hours, almost 4 hours. Several times he fell off the Vyasasana onto the floor, and it was a high Vyasasana too. It's quite a drop in those days. So you'd had to be there to know the humor behind it. Everyone thought, prema, bhava, at last somebody broke through. Real unending ecstasy, not just, jumping up and down in the kirtan so the girls will see you, but some real ecstatic kirtan, or playing the mridanga so everybody will see you. No, some real ecstatic kirtan. They thought, this is finally somebody. And the thing became a huge issue. And even that person was asked, he was asked, what do you experience? And he was saying, I can't explain it. It's just Krishna's mercy, divine love. I cannot be held to blame. Krishna's to show us all. He's showing me, making an example of me. And all these things were coming out. And it was a torn committee, you could say. And it was spread all over the world. And the recordings of it spread all over. Some people went, oh God, what is this sound? And others were like, wow. And they could not decide, even at the highest level of the GBC, they could not come to a conclusion. What is this, right? So they decided to take that tape, there were many, take one of these tapes to Śrīla Sridhar Maharaj and let him hear it. Because they knew that he had the capacity to distinguish mundane sound, even if it was the holy name that was being chanted, and spiritual sound, which is coming down from the eternal plane, which is eternally connected there. You see, the real holy name of Krishna, in the beginning, you chant Hare Krishna, and in the end, Hare Krishna dances on your tongue. You are not even the chanter anymore. That is the real, when the real name of Krishna descends, he takes over completely. He orchestrates the kirtan. You don't. You are just, at that point, almost a bystander. Of course, you are chanting, but he is conducting that chanting. In the beginning, we move towards the holy name, and we are behind that chanting. But when the chanting is pure, the chanting itself takes over. It is another sound from the beginner's sound. It is not recognizable to any set of ears, that's for sure. In fact, sometimes those sweetest kirtans that come around on tapes and DVDs now and again, they're not spiritual at all. They're sung just for public glorification, attention, money. They are not sung from the heart of love and purity. So, so they decided, we'll let Śrīla Sridhar Maharaj hear these tapes because he has such distinguishing capacity. So they didn't tell him anything about the controversy, anything about anything. They just said, we have a tape, it's a kirtan, it's one of our senior men, one of the acharyas leading a kirtan. This much information they said, sing. We wanted you to examine the quality of this sound and just give us your humble opinion. So he agreed, so they set a little tape recorder. I'm sorry if I'm boring anybody if you've already heard this, but they set a little tape recorder and they put a little set of those small earphones that just kind of go in there. So they got them all set up in his ear. And they had it all set to, like, a place where the kirtan was really going. And they hit the play button. It was set at a nice volume. They hit the play button and he just went and knocked went like this and threw the headset off his thing. He listened to it for about, 1 or 2 seconds, 3 seconds at the most. And he went like this and threw the headset off. And then he went, and cleared his ears, and then he told him, it is Maya's kingdom, Maya's sound. And that was the discrimination that then led to so many other things after that point. And they could understand. And then, it came out in history. Not only was that Maya, that was LSD's Maya that was stimulating those kirtans. That came out later. That person had become so degraded, he was taking LSD and then sitting down in front of all the devotees and chanting and becoming the big shot. And then he became a small shot. So, but the ordinary devotees couldn't distinguish. It sounded good, looked good. He had tilak on. He had a sikha. Guess he's a devotee. He's in ecstasy. Why not? He's been chanting for 20 years or something like this. No proper discrimination. Everything based on the externals. So there's a saying, it takes one to know one. There are some guidelines that we can follow. Who is a bona fide devotee? And so many things. Certainly devotional dress, tilak, neck beads. So many externals are part of it. But if that's the only part of it, then what would you have thought if you walked into Prabhupada's pharmacy in 1926? And this little man standing there with a short crop of hair and a nice little mustache, and when the bell rang when you walked in, he would have said in Hindi, Betiye, aapke sahe, and you would have thought, man, a Vaishnava, he's got a mustache. You would have just said, I'll take a bottle of aspirin, and you would have left. Or what would you get there? some churnas or something. Liniment. You take some days pain liniment and leave. Who could recognize? Who can recognize? Who can recognize a Vaishnava? Once there was this man, he was just somebody, and he came to the West, and the devotee said, Prabhupada, there's one guru who's come from India. He's got long hair and a beard. He's opening some mission. Is he bona fide? This is in the early days. The Prabhupada said, I can't tell how bona fide he is by how long his hair is. Long or short. What does he say? What does he say? And that's where it begins usually. But even then, some people master what to say. The Sahajiyas, they've mastered what to say. You have to be a very, very close listener to understand the defect. The Nitai Gaur Radhe Shyam Babas, they chant minimum 64 rounds a day. They do kirtan. They've been doing kirtan for 50 years, 24 hours a day, at the Samadhi of Raghunath Das Goswami. It was 25 years. They'd been doing it 25 years ago, so it's safe to say 50 years. 24 hours a day, non-stop for 50 years. And every Bubba there chanting 64 rounds a day. Great cook, circumambulating Govardhan. Sometimes they circumambulate Govardhan Hill before they even eat. Or something like this. How do you know how bona fide they are? You got to be a very keen listener and know what you're listening for. So in some cases, then you find out very subtleties that Nityananda Prabhu, he is in Madhurya Bhav. He is actually Radha Bhav. He is actually Radharani. They consider Nityananda Prabhu to be Radharani. As we consider the position of Gadadhar Pandit to be Radha Bhav, they consider it as Nityananda Prabhu. So if you know the ontology of the Siddhanta, you know what is what, then you'll understand. But based on regular principles, very, very strict. No fooling around. Strict chanting, strict sadhana. But we're still socking the pillow. Those guys have already finished 30 rounds. But they are Sahajiyas. Sahajiya means they are materialists. A type of materialist. They are rejected and they have no entrance into the spiritual world. They remain in this material plane of consciousness. So how to know, you see? How to know. To save yourself. It's very easy now. Oh, Guru Maharaj said. You know, if you follow Guru Maharaj, then you just go, well, Guru Maharaj said, we don't read that book. So we don't read that book. Why does Guru Maharaj say don't read that book? Don't read this book. Don't do that. So you will have a chance to learn the right thing from the right people first. Later, you may look at so many books, and when knowing the real thing, the right thing, then you'll know this is not the real one. This may be very fanciful. This may be very colorful. This may be very, very sweet. This might even be full of nectar, Prabhu. But you know, this is not the one. There's nobody in this room, probably except for myself and maybe Vishnu Maharaj and sannyasis, who could read the book called Advaita Prakash. Is it called Advaita Prakash? Which is for sale in ISKCON bookstores all over the world, and know the defect of this book. Because you're not that well read or studied, and we haven't discussed it. You'd read it and go, oh, this is nectar. This is just pure nectar about Advaitacharya. And it is. But laced in that nectar is a particular poison, and it's meant just for you, the Gaudiyas, the followers of Gaur Nitai. The book is written by the so-called followers of Advaitacharya. And there are a few things which they hold a contention with the Gaudiyas about. And in this book is where they set the stage to defeat you and your religious point of view about Mahaprabhu. This is where they defeat you and your whole parampara. And they have written this book just to make it so tasty for the Gaudiyas. It's just filled with the kind of nectar, Prabhu, that Gaudiyas love. And that's the bait. How do you catch a fish? You just put one of them big old slimy worms on a hook, dangle it out there, and the fish just... He's seen that hook 100 times, but look at that worm. Whomp. And he comes and eats it. So what? Nectar, Prabhu? Real Krishna consciousness might not be so much nectar. It will be sacrifice. A lot of sacrifice. Not always nectar. A good hard day's work in Krishna's garden hurts. Your muscles ache. You get sunburned. Your back aches. That's not exactly nectar. But actually it is. It's another type of nectar. This sacrifice, this pain for Krishna will produce the highest nectar in time when it is ripened. You finally get to retire. Somebody else does the hoeing. After you've blown your back out. So what is nectar? Better don't go for the nectar. Devotees used to have wild ways of dancing. We're so, what do you call it? We're so, conservative. But people would look at us and go, what's wrong with these people? They got broken legs? I mean, what's wrong with them? You know, you got to be running up and down the temple room, spinning around, picking somebody up and passing them around in the air like this. You know, you got to just get in there and pull your earrings out and just like let it rip, you know. And that's ecstatic, Prabhu. It was an ecstatic kirtan. Bash the guy next to you with the kartal, stomp on a few, you know, get right in there and knock elbows, men and women too, you know. Kirtan for the holy name. They call that ecstatic. So we're just a bunch of old futsies up here in Vermont, a bunch of woodchucks. So this has been going on a long time. So once seeing the fashion of that time, which was a little different than now, but it was still quite a fashionable kirtan. Srila Prabhupada said, tell them dance like I taught them in 1965. We used to call that the Prabhupada two-step. There's only two steps in the step, one to the left, one to the right, one to the left, one to the right, one to the left, one to the right. Put your hands up if you like, or clap your hands. That was called the Prabhupada step. He said, please tell them, chant like I have taught them. So this big, actually big announcement came down in Mayapur one morning when there was maybe 700 devotees in the temple room. Right after Arti, this announcement came. So that was the standard for the rest of the festival. When devotees went back to their stations around the world, well, in New Vṛndāvana, things just weren't as fired up as they used to be with these kind of old fogey-style kirtans, you see. So the leading devotee there at that time, Kirtanananda, he wrote letter to Srila Prabhupada. And he said, since we changed the style of kirtan, the kirtans just aren't as ecstatic as they were before. You see, Prabhupada wrote back and said, never mind ecstatic. You see, because he can understand that ecstasy, and he wrote about it one place, is just youthful bile secretion. It is written in Caitanya-caritāmṛta. That ecstatic is just bile secretion. Actually, he didn't blame it on the youth, but compared to him, we were all youth. No, he said it was just bile secretion, just hormones firing, you see. Real ecstasy of the holy name, it is another thing, and it's far superior. You may be frozen like stone. One ecstasy commands you to dance, laugh, cry, sing. Another one makes you frozen like stone, you see. But we never see that. Only the ecstatic is jumping like wild people, you see. We never see anybody mortified like stone, frozen in time, you see. So, throughout Krishna consciousness, there is the real thing, and there is the shadow of the thing. It's like on a sunny day. The sun also illuminates the real thing. When you go outside, the sun illuminates your presence there. You will be seen very nicely. But it throws a shadow next to you, which is not the real you see. So with the holy name of Krishna, also these other things come. With the holy name of Krishna, all the bad things in your heart, they are also flourishing and watering. Watering and flourishing. The holy name, what happens when you water the garden? What? All the weeds don't drink any of it? They all just wrinkle up and die and the tomatoes grow? No. In fact, what happens? The weeds grow faster than the plant. So it is said that the holy name of Krishna is the watering process. But this watering also nurtures the weeds. So the gardener has to weed the garden. So you have to identify within yourself those things which are undesirable. Or if you have a problem, you ask those who are sitting next to you, what's, desirable and undesirable. You take help from others. What's desirable and undesirable. But ultimately, you have to see these things yourself. And then you have to remove those things. You have to eliminate them. You have to Weed out the anarthas, the unwanted things, in order for your devotional creeper to properly grow. And that process is the class. It is said that the process of weeding the anarthas is this hearing, this critical point of hearing. Now, for the highest devotees, just to hear the Leela of Krishna, there is considered to be anarthas right up to bhava. Just prior to prema, there are some anarthas. Those anarthas, types of anarthas, can Krishna really do anything he wants with you? Like cut your head off? Are you ready for that even? No, I mean, anything means I'll take Rasgula or Sandesh, but not really. I mean, he wouldn't do that, would he? Not really. Well, Bhishma was ready to lie down on the bed of arrows. Or so many things. No, we don't expect that, that's going to happen, but real sacrifice? Are we really? Mahaprabhu says, you are free to do everything and anything with me. And he means it. Do we mean it? No. But we're on the right path. So, in the highest stage, just hearing the sweet pastimes of Krishna removes those last small, teensy-weensy barriers between the jiva and Krishna. They are removed. But in the beginning, just those sweet pastimes of Krishna don't root out those big, deep-rooted, carrot-sized anarthas, or carrot-sized, banyan tree-sized anarthas in the heart. That doesn't do it. It doesn't do it. Rather, the sweet pastimes of Krishna make those trees grow deeper and so forth. Therefore, those who are still swayed more by anarthas should not entertain the ear with the at least the intimate pastimes of Krishna, Madhurya pastimes. Killing the demons, that's a good one. Krishna's cutting off the heads of demons. Those demons represent anarthas. So it is beneficial for that. So those pastimes. Bhagavad Gita is a pastime. It's a Leela. People want to hear Leela of the Lord. Well, hear what the Lord had to say when he finally got everybody's attention in this world. We're not in Vṛndāvana. We're in this world. And this is the Leela, Bhagavad Gita. And that will help to purify us. Then we'll be guided in due course. All things will come deprived of nothing. But if we shortcut the process, self-deceivers, and cheat ourselves, shortcut of, we are deceived of everything. We get nothing. We may get a grand shadow of the real thing. And Srila Śrīla Maharaj has written, and the inspiration to dance with that shadow. Actually, he didn't say dance with the shadow. He said inspiration to live in the fool's paradise. So I say the inspiration to dance with the shadow. How do you want to dance with the shadow? You want to dance with the princess, not with the shadow. But if you do not approach in the right way, then you only get the reflection, not the real thing. Like there was this one Mughal emperor, is the word besieged? He besieged a fort called Chittor in Rajasthan, southern Rajasthan, Mewar. And then to release the siege, he wanted to see the beauty of Padmini. Padmini was the queen, and in medieval history and such up to this day, at least by legend, she was the most beautiful woman ever to have been born in the mortal India, you see. This is not including gopis and Radharani and others, but amongst mortals, the most beautiful queen ever to come out of India. So this Mughal emperor wanted to see Padmini. So this, of course, was unacceptable to the people. You see, all they had to do was let this Mughal ruffian and his giant armies see Padmini, not naked, just see the queen. And he would draw his armies back. But they couldn't live with that. That the eyes of this filthy monster will fall upon the chaste beauty of their queen. But they were in a difficult situation. So they decided to do that. So they set up a series of mirrors. It wasn't just one mirror. It was like 20 or 30 mirrors, large mirrors, reflection. And Padmini was way off in another room, and the reflection of her sitting in a chair came all the way to this one mirror, and that barbarian was allowed to see that mirror. And because he saw Padmini, he had to then withdraw his armies. That was the deal, you see. So the same time, the chastity of Padmini and the dignity of Padmini, it is preserved. Right? So he got the shadow. Also, Ravana, he never touched Sita. He never even saw Sita. He only heard how beautiful she was. He wanted to capture her. By the time he got there, Maya Sita was waiting. The real Sita was living in the ashram of Agni. And Maya Sita means a material form of Sita was sitting there, and Ravana captured Maya Sita and took her off to his palace and all this. And he never even saw the real Sita. Maya Sita, shadow. The holy name of Krishna has got a shadow also. All devotional things have a shadow. In other words, that's the bait for the barking dogs, you see. That is thrown to those who are not really qualified, you see. If you want to distract a dog, you throw him a bone over here, and he goes there, and he's satisfied. Mystic power is one of those such bones to throw the dogs. So those who are not really devoted to Krishna, but play in the field of devotion, they get shadow Krishna, shadow Nam, shadow Lila, shadow Bhav, shadow Prema, shadow bliss. They get the shadow of all these things. And the inspiration that these things are real. Of course, you wouldn't want the dog to figure it out that it wasn't a real thing, right? You want to give him a taste over there, so he'll just stay out of the real way, right? And that's what Krishna does. So what will save us is our sincerity above all. Our sincerity will be our guide. Our sincerity, and then with our sincerity, we'll learn properly what is real devotion. Proper discrimination will come, and we will be able to save ourselves from so many unwanted things that are there in the world. Some people, young little Vaishnavas, they can't even discriminate. Cigarette smoking isn't good. Out in Los Angeles, big cities, New York, whether it's marijuana, other drugs, premarital relationships, they can't discriminate anything. So you're not born a Vaishnava. It is not possible. You're not born a Vaishnava any more than you're born a doctor. You may be born in a doctor's family. Mom and dad might be doctors. Dad might be, even showing you how to do surgery or something. But you're not a doctor until you're a proven doctor by the bona fide and authorized standards, until you have actually learned. So no one is born a Vaishnava. Vaishnavas are born, of course, but it's by their activities that they are Vaishnava, not by just their birth. You can be born into wealth, and that is your wealth, but you cannot be born into this, actually. You see. But it is said that if you are fortunate in your previous lives, then you will be born in the family of devotees, and you will be given the opportunity from your very birth of eating prasadam, hearing the holy name of Krishna, different things like this, you see. But obviously, if we just, reality is reality, look around, and there are thousands of Hare Krishna kids over the years. Some of them aren't even vegetarians anymore, so obviously they weren't born devotees. You see. They were born in the family of devotees, and an opportunity to become devotees. So, whether we were born there, whether we're not born there, God knows our heart better than we ourselves. But we must come to understand ourselves also. Not just say, well, he knows. Well, he knows, but do you know? Do you know what's in your heart? Are you truthful with your own self? Some people are very truthful in the world, but they're liars to themselves. They're just self-deceivers, you see. Śrīla Maharaja said, save yourself. Do not become a self-deceiver. He was talking to the devotees who had joined the movement, who had become Prabhupada's disciples, and they had sacrificed so much. Family wealth, education, opportunity, their youth. They had sacrificed that. You think it's fun when you're 16 or 17? Wow. When you cross that legal age, you can do whatever you want. When you're a certain age, you can walk, talk, do your stuff, whatever you want. The teens, that's just teeny bop stuff. Freedom begins in your 20s. That's when you can really party. That's when you can really rock and roll. And that's when all these people surrendered their lives at the feet of Srila Prabhupada and became Krishna's servants. Big sacrifice. Then later, when they reached their 40s, they started backpedaling there. And he was saying, save yourself. Don't be a self-deceiver. Don't forget that for which you have come. You've come to do good to yourself and good to the world. Now, midstream, don't turn around and go back the other way. Don't forget why you have come here. You know, you see this in movies a lot. It's a type of a plot. They lose the plot. It's like, you know, what's this all about? Why are we fighting this war? What is this? You know, recently we saw there was a gentleman. He was with something like the CIA, and this is a noble thing to protect the country. And this whole thing was going down, and some man has got to die unnecessarily in the whole thing. And it boiled down to, and this man was saying, what's it about? What's this really all about? In other words, there was an ideal. You know, there was a constitution. There was a way of living. We did this because of something. What's it come down to? And he said, toasters, man, toasters. Economics, arrangements with China. Few people got to die, but cheaper toasters. The economy goes on, you know. They lose the plot. It's true. It's true. It's what's going on even right now as we talk. What's the plot? This thing is not over September 11. I'll live to the end to see a big chunk of it. And surely all you young people are going to see it play out, what it really was that started. Not just started that day, but really got in everybody's face. Now people want to forget about it. It's over now. It's summer. We're going to party. We're going to putt golf. We're going to the great estate. In fact, you can get your season tickets now. For half price. I'm telling you. That's not what Al-Qaeda's doing. That's not what Hamas is doing. That's not what over a half a dozen bloodthirsty militant Islamic groups are doing. They are planning how to kill you, my dear. Kill your family and annihilate you from the face of this earth. That is their plan. And that's what they do day and night and day and night. But we want to go back, we the big Americans, we just want to go back to business as usual, party as usual. It ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. And even to get back to that business as usual, thousands and thousands will lose their lives. Thousands. So, as Jaydev said, it's probably not coming directly to Vermont, but when you drive through Pulteney, you ever drive through Pulteney? Is it Pulteney? Wells? No. It's Rutland on Route 7. There's this little park, and there's this one always catches my eye. There's this dead guy laying there, you know. He's the fallen Vietnam vet. And all through the park, going back to World War I, are these, placards for the Rutlanders who died. So it does come to Vermont, one way or the other. When there's world crisis, when there's world war, when there's conflicts, it goes everywhere. No one is spared, actually. It goes everywhere. So, of course, we're not militants, you see. But, where did I get off on that point? What was the reason? I forgot. I was just making an example about that.
Terrorists and come disrupt about the police gun midway.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so it's just like, you know, a lot of people are like, okay, it's over. It's not over. You have to go the whole 9 yards. You have to carry this out. It's a lifetime pursuit. Madhyama-adhikārī is the bulk of your life. What is Paramahansa? You will not taste that until your mature age, not just in material age, but age in Krishna consciousness also. And some of you think like, gee, Christianity is so easy. You just accept the blood of Jesus in your home. You're free. If you think it is so cheap, well, try that route. Go ahead, give it a go. You say, well, we're vegetarians. We don't accept the blood of anybody. We don't eat human beings. We don't eat the body of Jesus. We follow his advices. Love God. That's a lifetime occupation. If marriage is supposed to be a lifetime occupation, what to speak of loving God? How did you get off the hook because you spent a weekend at the ashram, or a year or two, or 5 years, or 10 years, or 20 years loving God? Now you're off the hook. You know, I loved God, now it's my turn. No, it's for life. It's more than marriage. It's more than anything. It's more than sannyas. It's more than anything. It's all for life. And the price you pay, you're being offered hundreds of trillions of billions of dollars and you're being asked, could you just give 1/10 of 1%? Or even 1/10 of that? Could you do that? Could you show us? Like sometimes you say, well, why don't you want to do it? And they'll go, well, there's lots of reasons. And you go, well, give me one. And they can't say anything. I thought you said there was lots of them. Just give one of those things. So that's all that's required. Can you do just this little bitty lifetime, which is, I heard something Gaurava was saying in class the other day, when you're young, it's like, whoa, man, I've been here 14 years, I'm wise. And you're 18, it's like, I know what it's about. And the time is so long with God. Every time I meet a little 6 or 7 year old, I go, how old are you? And they go, 10. I go, whoa, it's a long time, huh? They're like, yeah, it's just like 10 years, And then it's just like, they just start clicking by. These 10s are like 2s, they just go by. Like, it seems like, Vishnu Maharaj is going to cross over 60 next year. 60. I remember when we had a birthday party for me when I crossed 50, and it was just like 3 more years and I crossed 60. It's like, well, wait a minute, I can practically remember the conversations on that day back in Washington, right? But, most of you kids were still playing, cross-board Monopoly or something. That was the thrill of the weekend, Stay up late and play Monopoly. Now Monopoly is... When's the last time you played Monopoly? Yeah, see, Monopoly, where's Monopoly? We used to play that whole week Monopoly marathons. You combine the money and everything from like 3 or 4 boards and just go all weekend or something, That's Monopoly, That's a big thrill then. Then, there's a lot of things in life. You go on. Life is very short. And most of us don't reach to be 100. It's like most people think in their mind, 80, when you're 50, it's like, wow, it's too early, 60, I just got going, Well, 70, you're kind of slowing down. Okay, 80, yeah, you think, if you live to be 80, no problem dying then, right? No problem. You live to be 80. You get to be 82. You want to live as much as you did when you were 6 years old. Nobody wants to die. Nobody. Unless they're just suffering and in pain. But most people just want to live. That's the nature of the soul. We want to live. Nobody wants to die at any time. Really. Even these suicide bombers, they don't really want to die. But they lose the plot. And fighting becomes the way of life. They're just born in war, they live in war, they die in war, and they forget what they're fighting for. Then when they get it, they ship off and become mercenaries and go somewhere else and fight. They lose the plot along the way. So don't let that happen to you. Don't lose the plot along the way. What is this life? What have you come to? Why are you here? I'm particularly speaking to the adults. The youth, you make your own decision. It's coming. Like I said before, you will put up the picture of Krishna or not. Be your call, not mine. Mom might one as a wedding present or something, but it's your call. Then your real bhakti begins. That's real bhakti. Then it really begins for you. Everything else is preliminary. Like for the SEALs, buds. They have this training called buds. That ain't the real deal. That's just practicing up. So in your home with mom and dad, it's just practicing up time. Once you move out on your own, like the girls, they have their own apartment. I haven't been in there to inspect it, but they probably have a picture of Krishna, and they do some offering, and they want to be devotees. So the choice is yours. It's not a choice anybody else makes. Anyway, as devotees, we're not satisfied just with our own devotional life. Our ideal is also to try to change people's world view. That this world really does become a better place to live while living, and a springboard when going to live the much better life, the eternal life.